Welcome to another edition of Substack Live right here at golongtd.com, your home for long form journalism. We've got a lot up at the site right now. The Buffalo Bills, they're the hometown team, so we're always keeping a close eye on Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, and what this regime is going to do into year 9. They've been knocking at that Super Bowl door for a while. So sat in on both press conferences for the head coach, for the GM, let it marinate for a little bit, went down to NOLA for the Super Bowl, covered that entire week down there, and came back up and re-listened, rewatched, and tried to make sense of everything. So thank you everybody who has subscribed to check that out. It's long. Typically stuff at Go Long is pretty long, so at least we put it right in the name of the publication, about 7,000 words. But everything from Sean McDermott, the good and the bad. The bad, I thought it was a little strange to open up the press conference with the offense, the last drive, gently steering everybody's attention toward Josh Allen and the offense, unable to get points with a chance to win the game, which is technically true, right? Like they did have a chance, much like last year, but I really don't know what else Josh Allen can do in these games. It's been calamity after calamity for this Bills defense when everything is on the line. That's the story for this team in the postseason. So we kind of get into those numbers, and Sean McDermott protecting that defense like he typically does. The good though, I think that he really did evolve in some really positive ways. It's one thing after last season, the same setting, the same season-ending press conference. It's one thing for Sean McDermott to kind of sit there and talk about a winner's mindset, talk about belief on the heels of, hell, giving it to Damar Hamlin on 4th down at home against the Chiefs. You can't just snap your fingers or wave a magic wand and get players to think that way. Kind of like we reported in that McDermott problem series in 2023. I mean, coaches and players alike have both said, like, the tightness, the fact that the coach is a little bit of a robot and high strung ahead of these games, and even in May in an OTA, it does manifest to the field. That doesn't just change overnight. I think that does take time. It takes a lot of new faces, like Brandon Beane said, getting guys in who don't have those quote unquote scars from playoff losses past. So he did that in the offseason. They get into the regular season. They go for it on 4th and short. They trust Josh Allen. They find some balance. So that's the good. I don't think it's just, you know, uh, filibustering fluff out of Sean McDermott to talk about himself in the third person 3 times in one answer and talk about players believing in themselves and Tyler Bass sending him out there on a 61-yard field goal attempt against Miami, the same game he missed an extra point. Like, you have to think about everything that can go right in these games, right? Not what's going to go wrong. And that dread was real, I think, for these Bills in these playoff games past. They didn't lose to the Chiefs because they were terrified of everything that could go wrong. They just lost because the defense was really, really bad and the offense struggled in some situational moments. Now, they would have gotten smashed by the Eagles in the Super Bowl, like every other team would have gotten smashed in the Super Bowl by the Eagles anyways. So that's the bigger picture here, and that's explored as well. Like, how do you somehow get a game wrecker on defense when, also, this is Ella. Ella, can you say hi?
No.
Come on. Okay. If anybody has a question for Ella, just let me know. And then questions in general, let me know. This is all NFL offseason talk fodder, not just Bills, but we're leading with the Bills. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think the Eagles would have been a rough matchup for everybody. Obviously, every team would love a defensive line that can annihilate an offensive line one-on-one. Vic Fangio did not blitz once because he didn't have to blitz once. He was able to cover. I'm telling you, man, like sitting up in that auxiliary seat in the press box, which is great. I remember Bob McGinn always preferred that when he covered the Super Bowl. He used to give me a press box seat because he wanted to be in the atmosphere, in the environment, and you could feel the energy from Eagles fans. They weren't just booing Taylor Swift. They'd show anybody on that Jumbotron. It could have been a affable, friendly, middle-aged man or woman just in Chiefs gear, and it was vehement. They let those fans know it so you could feel it. But you could tell watching early on from above that the Eagles getting pressure up front without blitzing, the Eagles in coverage, locking down these receivers, that it was going to be a long day for Patrick Mahomes. So if you're Buffalo, like, yeah, Brandon Beane noted, those Chris Joneses aren't just, at the store. You can't just buy them in March at a discounted TJ Maxx rate. That is not an option. And if there is somebody available, like maybe Miles Garrett is, we'll try to dig into that situation this week. It's probably going to cost you multiple first round picks, and it's going to be a detriment to the cap. And hell, didn't the Bills just go through that with Von Miller? Didn't they just? I mean, that's the thing. The Bills have been pouring resources into the D line. They've been drafting Greg Rousseau's and Boogie Bashams and AJ Epinessa's, and Dwayne Carter is a third-round pick that they got in the deal with Kansas City to move down when they could have taken Worthy. Dwayne Carter is a game day inactive by the playoffs. I think he had 13 or 14 tackles. Maybe he comes on, but they have tried. I mean, they have back to Mario Addison, right? They've been signing free agents. They've been drafting guys. That's probably what's disappointing is they have been pouring in the same amount of resources that the Eagles have. But you can't stop. You can't just think status quo is going to work the next time you face the Chiefs or the Bengals or the Ravens or anybody in the postseason, that it's going to be okay. They're too light up front, probably a little too slow on the back end. So that's going to take maybe some major structural changes to how they even play defense. Maybe Sean McDermott does take over some play calling. I mean, it'd be great to know what he actually did at some key moments this past season. He admitted the defense took a step back this year. Bobby Babich was calling plays this year. They've got to do something, and I think Max Crosby's, Miles Garrett's, these Trey Hendricksons, those are pipe dreams. You've just got to find these players in the draft, and if you can't get a veteran, I mean that'd be ideal, right? Go the veteran route, because identifying these players in the drafts has really been hit or miss. Even Ed Oliver, who gets extended, had his moments against KC, but for all so bad. I think you got to take a chance on character. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Let me know. I mean, maybe I'm off my rocker. I just feel like, yeah, the vibes are strong. The bonds are strong. This team loves each other. That matters. You could sense it in the locker room that this is a really, really close team. Bean talked about that as well. They're playing Settlers with Catan. They're playing chess, right? There's a bubble hockey, and there are not nearly enough guys play that bubble hockey machine inside of the locker room, by the way, because it's the premier game that should be played. So hopefully, maybe that's what the key is. Maybe they lost to the Chiefs. There's not enough bubble hockey. It's right there. It's right by Dawson Knox' locker. He could be the bubble hockey king. But they are close, and that matters big time in a human game. But I think when Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott and these scouts and these coaches, and they have those 15-minute speed dates next week at the Combine in Indianapolis, they've got to remember you're not interviewing somebody for a 9-to-5 job. They're not going to be working at CVS down here on Boston State Road one direction, or the Boston Public Library the other direction in Western New York. You are hiring people to whoop somebody's ass. And yes, I can swear my daughter is now playing in her bedroom, so no worries there. You need to find somebody that's violent. This is a violent game. And I tell you what, talking to these Eagle players all week, it's different, man. They've got some dudes. They've got a Jalen Carter who, go back and read Bob McGinn's pre-draft feature on the Georgia D lineman. Team clearly took him off their board. I mean, tons of baggage. People wondering if he even loves football. But man, you turn on the film, and when he turns it on, he can be dominant. He can be disruptive. The Eagles might not even been in the NFC Championship game if not for Jalen Carter's, was it a third down sack of Matthew Stafford? I mean, the Rams were in position to win that game, and he wrecks it, just like Chris Jones wrecks games. Chris Jones had red flags. I mean, this predates Bean and predates McDermott. We had to give our buddy Jim Moan his help for that one, but Mississippi State, I think one scout, I'm paraphrasing, called him a mess of a kid. John Dorsey and the Chiefs, they take a chance. Like, yeah, you're not picking in the top 5. You're not going to get Abdul Carter when you're a playoff contender every year. But if you're picking at the bottom of the first round, even the top of the second round, that's usually when a risk reward type of pick can kind of trickle on down. Doesn't mean you're going to hit it. I think in the same draft as Chris Jones, wasn't there a guy, Robert Kimdiche, Ole Miss? And there's a lot of hype for him, the size, the speed. I'm not saying like you take a risk, it's going to work out, but I think they've got to take a chance. And I think that the locker room is strong enough to kind of handle that risk, handle that chance. It wasn't in 2015. I've said it a million times on here. Sure as hell wish I would have taken better notes working at the Buffalo News that season because holy hell, that ICANN and Polly is getting picked up after he slugs Geno Smith in the jaw. You've got LaShawn McCoy talking about NDA parties, and it's no weird orgy thing at a press conference ahead of the season. What else happened? First time I talked to Sammy Watkins, he's demanded the ball 10 times a game. All hell breaks loose. It was one thing after another. I mean, Carlos Williams had a crazy concussion that year. I mean, knocked him out cold. Then the next offseason, he shows up about 40, 50 pounds overweight because he's eating all the time with his pregnant fiance and eventually eats his way out of the NFL. Mario Williams is the $100 million man. I had players tell me that he cares more about his remote control cars than he does playing football. Richie Incognito's on the team, and he's about the 47th craziest personality, it seems, involved with the Buffalo Bills. So, yeah, you take a chance on a player in the draft for that team, it's not going to end well. It's not going to work out. This team, it's strong. You've got the leaders. Sean McDermott's right to talk about Josh Allen the way he does and say that he took this step as a leader, and they've got this leadership council. It's not just cliche. I mean, they've got guys that can run this thing on their own. So look, if it doesn't work out, I haven't really dug into who that player could be in this draft. I'm just speaking in general. But if it doesn't work out, like say it blows up in your face, okay, guess what? Kyer Elam might blow up in your face. You might have to play him in a playoff game 3 years into that first round pick's career, and it might be total humiliation. That's what happened. The Kelvin Benjamin trade, that might not work out. The Amari Cooper trade, let's face it, I get it. Great teammate, great locker room presence, said all the right things, had a few moments. That wasn't what the Bills were hoping for at all. So trades don't work out, picks don't work out. I don't know. I think it's important for the Bills to remember they're dealing with a violent game. Okay, I'm going to shut the hell up and look at some of the questions you guys have sent over because there's some good ones. Oh, yes. Istanbul Jake, good to see you, my man. He asks, can Ray Davis be the lead back if Cook leaves soon? We'll start with that one. He's got a couple. Maybe. And hey, I think that's a good example of the Bills treating the quote unquote chemistry experiment that Brandon Bean references with looking not just for choir boys. I mean, we wrote his story at Go Long. Y'all read it. Like, this is somebody who was homeless growing up, in foster homes, living on the streets, surviving day to day. I wish I had it right in front of me. Let me pull it up while I filibuster a little bit to find it. He plays with a certain demeanor. He plays with a certain edge, which is needed. This isn't somebody who is just going to kind of waltz into a game like he's waltzing into a library. So he could be, and it was at the San Francisco game in the snow that he proved he can carry a load. He's got some thickness to him. He can catch the ball as well. Yes, survival mode, the power of Ray Davis's pain. So here's what Ray Davis said. He said, quote, for me, I've got to run hard. Everybody's counting me out. Everybody's told me I couldn't do this. Too fat, too slow, won't make it. There's so many things that I've heard. It was not supposed to happen. And when I run out there, I let people feel me. I let mother effers know. I think I hear Ella in the hallway. Not going to spell that one out. It's a long game. It's a long, long game. I may be short, fat, whatever you want to call me. You're going to have to face me for 4 straight quarters. And at the end of the game, I'm going to earn your respect. You're going to give me my respect. I didn't get here off luck. I got here off straight ground in my ass. So y'all are going to have to find out what it feels like going through 24 years of BS in the ringer for 4 straight quarters. That's what you want to hear out of a football player. And he plays that way. So that's me kind of talking in circles, the weave, coming back to a non-answer. Maybe, I don't know, maybe if he proves it this year, maybe that gives you a reason to kind of wait on the James Cook contract. But James Cook made it pretty clear. He wants $15 million a year. That'd make him the second highest paid running back in the NFL. He pinned it on his Instagram. I haven't really checked to see who he's following, who he's unfollowing. I know that just kind of tells you that players in the NFL have no leverage, right? In the NBA, players just talk to, I don't know, Woj or Shams and just say, yeah, I want to play for that team. And eventually they just get to that team. In the NFL, with the way contracts are structured, all you can really do is piss and moan on Instagram. I'm pro player. I wish these guys could really do anything and everything they want to get what they want. They're the ones sacrificing their bodies and brains game to game. I just think, I don't know. To me, and I think Jim Monis disagrees. And we should get him on another one of these to talk more in depth about James Cook. He mentioned it in passing. I think you pay him. He is a feather in your cap if you're Brandon Bean. Yeah, you've got the Elams and the Boogies and the Kincaids, and we'll see what happens with him and Keon Coleman. But James Cook has been an absolute find. Like, you hope that you were getting somebody that's what they say. They kind of drafted him as a receiver in addition to being a back that day. He only played 48% of the snaps, so he's not like this bell cow. But I think he is what a premier running back should be in 2024, now 2025. You can line him up everywhere. He can run between the tackles. He does have game breaking ability. He's tough as hell. That touchdown on 4th and goal at the 1 yard line is one of the best individual efforts you'll ever see from anybody. I mean, that was awesome. I don't know why you wouldn't pay him. He's 25, and like we wrote a couple times over, if you're a contender, if you can realistically talk yourself into competing for a Super Bowl, you can pay these running backs. They're worth it. I mean, the Eagles did it with Saquon Barkley. I know he averaged less than 3 yards a carry in the Super Bowl, but that is because the Chiefs sold out. Spags and the players, they completely just said, Jalen Hurts, try to beat us. And he did. So a reason he is able to beat you and throw deep to Devontae Smith, have those key plays to A.J. Brown, is because of the presence of Saquon Barkley, who rushed for 2K. Derrick Henry easily could have had the Ravens in the Super Bowl, and he is very much still in his prime at whatever he is, 30 years old, close to. And then Josh Jacobs with the Packers. I mean, we're going to get to the Packers in a big way this offseason because I think there's some questions there with the quarterback. Derrick Henry is 31. Yeah, we'll get to that team, but there's no arguing with the fact that Josh Jacobs was worth the money. I don't know. I feel like just pay James Cook. I'd make 15 a year, maybe a little steep. Maybe you don't go to that extreme, but he still has a good 3 to 5 years of his peak of his prime. And yet, out of your homegrown talents, Terrell Bernard, I guess it's probably more of a priority. He's a captain, your best player on defense. Next to him, I think James Cook is easily the most valuable player that you've drafted that's now looking for a second deal. So it seems right. We're not supposed to say to pay running backs. I would pay James Cook. All right, your second question won't be as long-winded on these, I promise. This is from Jake. Which players from playoff and Super Bowl teams will have inflated values in the offseason? And will the Bills or Packers go after any of these guys? By the way, the last Monis podcast was his best, bold and clear takes. I agree. Monis brought the heat. It's hard to argue with a lot of his points. I think I would probably said this as well. I'm not going to be as harsh on the GM when collectively the talent was good enough to beat the Chiefs in 4 regular season games. I think the defense, the coaching, failure in big moments and big spots has been more of the issue than just because they've got depth. You look at some of these teams, right? A player goes down and all hell broke loose. That kind of happened to an extent when Benford went down. So that, I guess I'm kind of, on my own point there. But overall, 1 through 53, this seems like a very deep Bills roster that can withstand some attrition that is a guarantee. That's a credit to the GM. Look, he needs Kincaid and Keon Coleman to step up in a big way. There ain't no magic solution walking through that door wide receiver. You drafted these guys as premier picks to be go-to guys. And again, get into that at golongtd.com. If you're a free subscriber thinking about upgrading, a great time to get access to that full story that's at the site. It kind of really brought me back to sitting down with Tony Gonzalez in Austin, Texas for Blood and Guts. I didn't really know this about Tony. He told me that year 2, he led the NFL in drops, had 16 drops, was depressed, locking himself in his bedroom, drinking Jack and Cokes day in and day out. He really could have been and never was. I'm not saying Dalton Kincaid was doing that, but year 2 for Tony Gonzalez was football hell. It was awful. He needed to change stuff in a big, big way. If I remember right, I think he even told me that Jason Whitlock's grading at the Kansas City Star lit a fire under him. Whitlock, who has transformed in the media industry since then. Yeah, he gave him a bad grade, and it It pissed him off. But that, whatever it was, like his career kind of falling apart 2 years in. Tony Gonzalez just completely changed everything. Just started showing up at practice, did more than what was required. That's when he really started his routine of catching 100 balls in 10 minutes before practice, before games, and just kind of grew to love the sport again. However, Dalton Kincaid gets there, finds his happiness, and strengthening it up, I suppose it will help him. They made that very clear, GM and head coach. They want him to gain some muscle. And Eric Ciano, who's been around, seems like forever as the strength coach, he was jettisoned. I don't know if it's point A to point B, if that's the reason why, but it makes you wonder, right? I don't know. I think you got to be careful, though, too. You drafted him to be the quote-unquote Cole Beasley-like threat who can read defenses, find holes in zone, beat man. You don't want Dalton Kincaid to morph into, I don't know, pick your tight end from the 90s, Mark Bruner. You want him to be a dynamic threat. So I haven't even gotten your question. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't, honestly. I got to look more at the available veterans for teams this offseason, Jake. I was on with Jeremy White and Sneaky Joe GR this morning, and Sneaky Joe brought up George Pickens. George Pickens has had his issues in Pittsburgh, but I kind of love it. I mean, if it's at your price, if it's at your value, the talent's there. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. That's the kind of risk, I guess, I wouldn't mind the Bills taking. And it could be, big upside for not a lot of costs. All right. Tim. Thank you again, Tim, for the cheese from Asheville, North Carolina. We finally worked our way through it. It was amazing. He says it's a big offseason for the Carolina Panthers, a ton of needs on defense, and they need game breakers on offense. At least they don't have to address the quarterback. It certainly didn't look that way after week 2, he says. Wow, the Bryce Young conversation. We need to look at Bryce Young this offseason. Great point. It looked like his career in Carolina was done. Maybe his career in the NFL was done. Turned it on, outplayed CJ Stroud. You're right. We're not worried about Bryce. I mean, we'll see if he can take the step, but it's not the DEFCON 4 situation it could have been at quarterback. I think it's going to be interesting, right? Dan Morgan, the GM, kind of comes from the Bills tree here with Brandon Beane, with Joe Shane. He was all in on Bryce Young. I can tell you that even when he wasn't the official GM, what I was told is he really believed in this quarterback. He wanted him at the top. I think that's a big reason that David Tepper kind of handed him the GM official duties post Scott Fitterer, and they didn't look for somebody outside the building. It's looking like a good choice right now. We'll see if that changes. If you're in the NFC South, man, anything is possible. They were in games. I mean, they took Philadelphia to the wire. Right, Xavier Legette catches that ball. They beat the Super Bowl champions. They beat a team. Granted, no two games are the same. No matchups are the same. But that tells you maybe Carolina's a little closer than we think. Okay, thank you, Marcus. He says, spot on, violent game. 1 second. How do I? Ed, good to see you, man. Ed says, is Team USA the Bills? Deep gets it done early, and Team Canada the Chiefs. Says the guy gets it done when it matters most. We're going to find out tonight. I cannot wait for U.S. Canada tonight. It's crazy. I mean, look, the NFL has these stupid Pro Bowl skill competitions and flag football nonsense, and nobody, I guess people are watching, but nobody cares. The NBA All-Star Game, I guess it happened last weekend, but it's a joke. Mac McClung was kind of fun. It just blows my mind. He's throwing down dunks like he was, jumping over cars, doing all this crazy stuff. And he's not even in the NBA. He's in the G League. Really good player in the G League. But I'm going to say USA Hockey 19, Canada -2. I think that they're just going to kick their ass tonight. Can't wait for it. I'm going to be with some buddies down at 911 Tavern in South Buffalo watching that game if you guys want to stop on and say hey. Joe, what is up? Joe in Brooklyn, Go Long OG. He asks, where do you see Stephon Diggs going this offseason? Isn't it funny, Joe? Like, we're talking about the Bills needing to take a risk on personality. I hope they do, right? It would be somebody like that has a little baggage. And they were all talking about camaraderie and tightness and bonds and all that. And it was always this subtle shot at Diggs. I don't know where he's going to go. I feel like Green Bay could make sense. Speaking of the Packers, if it's not Devontae Adams, I kind of like Green Bay as a spot. They need a veteran in that room. They've been the youngest team in the league for 2 years. Diggs wants to compete for a Super Bowl. Man, top of the head. All right. Jake has a final thought. If Pickens can't make it with Tomlin, I doubt he makes it anywhere. That's a very good point. When you look back at the receivers who have come through Pittsburgh, Antonio Brown, most infamously, it's amazing that they got what they did out of Antonio Brown. All right. I think that's going to do it for this edition of Substack Live. Let's definitely hop on more of these throughout the course of the off season. Make sure you download the app if you're watching this live. You absolutely did. Turn those notifications on. If you're listening after the fact in the podcast feed or at golongtd.com, just remember to add that Substack app. It's great. It's a great way to read, share, get everything instantaneously. Stories, podcasts, everything right there on the app. It's super clean, super user friendly, and it's a lot of fun jumping on these, even on February break. Ella, you want to say hi? I think we're shy. So let's get back to playing with Barbies down in the basement. Thank you so much, everyone. And hey, again, if you're new here, it's a great time to upgrade, to check out our story on the Buffalo Bills. What now? An extensive look at the Buffalo Bills 2024 finish, 2025 offseason, kind of parsing through their marathon press conference settings with analysis and opinion. And this time of year is great, man. I love just chatting with execs and coaches and players more in depth. They've got time to kind of carve out an hour and on the record, off the record, share how this league really works. That's always the goal. Bring you real football. So we'll have a lot. I think I mentioned it today. We're going to have a story on, let's just say, an AFC contender and an NFC contender. That's what we're working on here. Still working through some reporting there. Let me know what you want to read. You guys mentioned a few things on here. Tim with the Panthers. If there's a player that you think should be profiled, if there's a team you want to know what the hell's going on behind the curtain, just shoot me a message in the Substack app. Shoot me an email, golongtd@substack.com, and eventually, I promise, get back to you. Thanks so much.